Welcome back to Behind the Screen, where I take you behind the DM screen in my campaign, The Five Kingdoms. Now, when last we left our heroes, they were in Prince Larkin's party, and I used the last session to establish a number of things. One, Prince Larkin is evil. He beheaded someone for no other reason than just to take the necklace off the person's head, and later on they find out that, two, Prince Larkin is planning on traveling to different parts of the multiverse to pick up the two pieces of the obsidian crystal that were broken off. And he plans on rejoining them to the main piece of the obsidian crystal, which is below the obsidian castle in the Crystal City. Now, the necklace that Prince Larkin took off the boy has a pendant on it, which is actually a key to open up the Gate of Worlds. And when he takes that necklace off the boy, it triggers some wards that were put on the necklace. And those wards start up several things. Number one, the Fire Falls starts up again, north of Tor. And the Fire Falls is a continuous flow of lava that comes out the side of the mountain. It flows down into the bottom of the mountain, and through some tricks of some chambers down below, creates pressure and goes right back up again and flows out again, creating a continuous flow of lava. Now, the Fire Falls have not been active for as long as anyone can remember. In fact, most people don't even know what they are. And then next it sets in motion the Orcs, the Giants, the Lizard Folk, and the Dragons. Now, the Orcs, when the Fire Falls start up, know that it's time to fulfill their prophecy. They have a prophecy that tells them that they're going to take over humankind and become rulers of the world. Now, actually, the prophecy is missing a part, and we'll get to that later. Then the giants were placed around, there's giant statues placed all around Ban, and they were set there by the High Priestess of the Elves, and set so that they would activate as soon as that necklace gets stolen. So all these statues are coming to life around Ban, and the giants will try and create chaos and whatnot. Also, the lizard folk are realizing suddenly that it's time to go and defend the obsidian castle, defend the Crystal City from an invading army. And lastly, the dragons wake up. Now, the dragons are in a little underwater cavern that's filled with air, and they wake up, and after eating and regaining their strength, they're going to fly over to the Five Kingdoms and coordinate the lizard folk and the giants, and also help to save the king's heir. Now, all this is completely unknowns to the players, and I'll be dropping little hints about how this is happening, and it's up to them to try and fit it all together and figure out what's going on. Anyways, that was what we established last time, and that's the things that got set in motion by last month's events. Now, this month, when they come for their second session, they are going to be in Jeff's group. Jeff is a character that lives in Tor. He is a fighter. He works for the King's Guard, and he is the only main character in this group. Everybody else in this group are going to be either NPCs or players playing some of Jeff's friends. So they're kind of like a cross between NPCs and player characters. They're really not either, but they're both. Now, the players don't know it at this point in the game, but Maius, Prince Larkin is actually dreaming that he's Maius, in the same way that they dreamt that they were Lazara, Yuli, and Sable. So once Prince Larkin goes to sleep that night, he has this dream that is going to happen in this session with Jeff and his party. And Prince Larkin is dreaming that he's Maius, who is one of Jeff's friends. Also in the party is Luella Renders, and Athena is dreaming that she's Luella. We have Winston Hoff, and Bodaway is dreaming that he's Winston. We have Idette Van Overmeyer, and Hannah, the Hobbit, she's dreaming that she's Idette. And then we have Cyrilla Carmack, and Zenobia is dreaming that she's Cyrilla. So as you can see, it can get confusing, and this is part of the experiment. I want to see if this is going to work or if this is just going to be a mess. So we start out the session, and we're in Tor. So if you look, this is the city of Tor right here, and then just above that is where the Fire Falls start. They go right by this mountain right here, and they come out the side of the mountain, and it's just a continuous flow of lava. Then down below here, there's the Crystal City. That's where the Castle Obsidian's at, and that's where the Obsidian Crystal is, deep down in the dungeons. And then Ban is where Prince Larkin is from. He is now the ruler of Ban after killing his father. Now again, the characters, they don't know that he killed his father. They will run across rumors that it might have been something fishy, that he died under fishy circumstances or mysterious circumstances. And now Prince Larkin is the ruler. Now, I should mention that Tor is a beautiful town in the mountains. It's surrounded by aspen trees. Generally speaking, it doesn't have too much trouble with its neighbors, it being a little harder to get to, and not really rich in resources. It's a smaller town, just big enough to be a walled city, but not big enough to be any threat or, like a crown jewel that someone's going to want to try and take over. So generally speaking, the people who grew up in Tor and live in Tor have a great life. They don't get a lot of riches, but they have peace and quiet and everything else that you could possibly want in this setting. Now, several days pass, and Jeff is trying to forget about this crazy dream that he had, which seems more like a nightmare. But he can't get it out of his head, especially the vivid moment where Prince Larkin established that he was evil. So he's been trying to forget about this, and he's in the courtyard on the third day, sparring with some of his friends, when one of the city guard comes up to him, someone that he knows, and tells him that the king wants to see him. And he goes in there, and they tell him that they want him to go down with his friends and find out what happened to this adventuring party that they sent down in the dungeons. And the story goes that they had a few people go missing, and then it kept on. They sent this group down there to find out what's going on, and they never heard back from him. So they take Jeff and all his party down there to the dungeons, and they hand him off to another guard who opens up this locked door, takes him down another set of stairs, and gives them a brief spiel about what's going on in this little furnace room down below, and then leaves them there and goes upstairs and locks and bolts the door behind them. And they're left there kind of a little confused. What do we do next? Like they just suddenly got into this, and bam, all of a sudden they're down in the dungeons. So they go down below, and the first thing they find is 4 orcs, or maybe it's 3 orcs, something like that. Some orcs in a cage. They look like they've been there for a couple days. They seem to be starving, and the characters, bless their hearts, feed them a little bit and give them some water. And they're playing up pretty well. I thought that they don't know what orcs are. And so some of the party takes pity on them. Then they go farther down in the dungeons. They're making their way down farther, trying to figure out what's going on. They run into a few things that aren't that important. One side note I would mention, though, is that Idette, who is Hannah, dreaming she's Idette, and Hannah is a hobbit. Hannah's a very carefree, fun-loving hobbit, and she's going down in this dungeon, and she gets impatient when the other players are checking out the cells with the orcs in it, and she finds a stairway down, and she goes down this little circular stairway down into this room that has a pool in it with some white mist, and she's playing with the mist in the water, and it's really cool. She ends up wading out into the middle of the water because she's so enthralled by how cool this is. And as she's wading out into water, unbeknownst to her, a snake is sneaking up on her, and it jumps up out of the mist at her to strike. And luckily, Cirilla, by this point, has followed her down the circular stairs and is just getting to the bottom and looks over there, sees Idette in the pool, and then sees this snake go to strike. And Cirilla wins the initiative roll and casts a magic missile and kills the snake before it can even get Idette. But this is Idette's first experience with making a mistake that can get her in trouble. And it has a small effect on her. Then later on, down a little bit farther, they're checking out a room, and the stairs have some water flowing down, and it's slippery. Several people go down, and they almost slip and fall. Down at the bottom of this room, the water flows down into a little hole that goes down through the floor. Now, the hole it's about maybe 2.5 feet in diameter. Small, but big enough for someone to slide down into. And Idette, being the fun-loving hobbit that she is, decides to slide down the stairs, and of course, it works. She slides down really well, but she fails to catch herself at the bottom, and she ends up falling down through the hole into another pool down below. A couple of the characters decide to jump down after her, and the rest of the characters run out of the room and make their way down another set of stairs they found, figuring that that's the way to get to her. And they're right, it is. And they get down there, but they have to go through a doorway. So they stop and they listen at the door. They hear a few things, and then they bust down the door and they join the battle. In the meantime, Idet and a couple other people fall down into this pool down below. And of course, it makes a big splashing noise and alerts the orcs that are there worshiping at this altar. And I forget how many orcs there were. There's probably right around 10 or a dozen, something like that. One of whom is a priest. And so, of course, the orcs attack the three characters that are there, and a nasty battle ensues. Luckily, it's a small area, so they can't completely surround the three characters that are down there. But nonetheless, the orcs are pretty nasty, and these are pretty young characters that don't have a lot of hit points or a lot of abilities. So the battle doesn't go too well. I think Idet ends up dying either once, well, not dying, but going unconscious either once or twice. Now, I believe it was once, but it took a while before anybody got to her. So she made several saving throw rolls, and I think she had failed 2 of them before anybody got to her. So she was 1 failed saving throw from dying permanently. And a couple other of the characters also went unconscious during this battle, even after they broke down the door and joined in with them. And so it was a nasty little battle. And ever since then, Hannah has lost some of her carefree, fun-loving ways, and she's a little bit more careful now. Now, the other thing, again, I should say is, the characters don't know that Larkin is dreaming he's Maya. So everything that's going on at this time, Larkin is going to know the next day. And the characters aren't aware of that. So then the characters go farther down into this dungeon, and they get down about to the 5th or 6th floor down below the furnace room, and they run across another group of orcs. Now, they've run across a couple of groups of orcs along the way, but this group's a little bit bigger. They see 4 guards that come at them, and there's a tunnel that's right in the corner that's hard for them to see that leads down to another room full of 30 orcs. And so the 4 orcs aren't that big a deal. They can take 4 orcs, and they do. They battle the 4 orcs, and they're just finishing them off when a couple more orcs come out of the tunnel. And so they're battling them, and then a couple more orcs come out of the tunnel, and then a couple more orcs come out of the tunnel. And now they're starting to freak out because they don't know how many orcs are down in this tunnel, and it seems like 1 to 3 orcs come out of this tunnel every single round. So this starts to become a problem for them. So they get wise, and they flip over the table, and as they're killing the orcs, they're pushing them back, and they finally get the table covering the hole, and they're holding the table there, covering the hole, trying to figure out what to do. And of course, the orcs are on the other side of the table, pushing on the table, and they're pushing back, and the orcs are pushing, and they're pushing, and it's a constant battle not to let any of them out. And they could tell that sooner or later, the rolls are going to go against them at some point, and they're going to have a problem. So they talk about it a little bit, and Bodaway, who's playing Winston, decides that he's going to cast an entangle spell. So they let the table down. He casts the entangle spell right there, and that slows the orcs as they're coming out. Now they're coming out maybe 1 to 3 every other round. This becomes a much more manageable situation for them, and they're able to kill off all 30 of the orcs before anyone has a problem. I think one of them might have went unconscious, but it wasn't that big of a deal. Everyone was able to easily survive the battle. After they finish off those orcs, they go down into the lower section of the room, and they find the remains of the other adventuring party that had gone down into the dungeon. And they find a key on those remains. And the key actually fits the lock for the dungeons up above where the 3 or 4 orcs were incarcerated. And at this point, it's been a long day. The characters, some of them want to go on, others of them want to go back home and rest. They don't, the half the party that wants to go back home and rest doesn't want to rest down here. They feel more comfortable going back home and resting in their beds, and it's only 5 floors to go up. And they finally win the day, and everyone goes back upstairs and goes to rest for the night. So now the players know that there are orcs underneath the castle of Donegal. They don't know what they're doing down there, but something seems to be brewing because this is a new happening down below. Before this, everybody's been able to go down below into the dungeons and not get molested. And they got down to the bottom of the man-made areas of the dungeon. Everything from there on up is worked stone, it's wood floors. For the most part, it's all worked by humans. Then there was the tunnel that came out of the wall in the corner there where all the orcs came out of, and that is just a dug tunnel. So the players have an idea that this might be the end of where the humans have gone down. It might be the beginning of where the orcs have come up. And they've gone off and they've gone to bed, and so it gives them more to think about. And that was basically the end of the session. It was a lot longer than this video was. I apologize that it's a shorter video, but there's just a little bit to talk about, and I don't even need to bore you with all the other details. So appreciate you coming by and viewing it, and I will see you next time when we will join the Hobbits. See you then.